Well, it also provides a better reliability to the peer nodes. Mm-hmm. Because you have more nodes that are trustworthy out there, you're obviously going to increase the overall reliability of the network. And this is a bit, you're going to be specifically careful if you are connecting over networks such as Tor or I2P with that, because they're quite vulnerable to DDoS attacks and that kind of thing. Now, I know Tor has hardened quite a bit recently by having a proof of work requirement to prevent some types of DDoS attacks. Mm-hmm. But the reliability is what you're going to get out of it.
This week on Monero Talk is sponsored by Cake Wallet. Store, send, receive, and exchange your Monero and Bitcoin safely on iOS and Android too. Cake Wallet is open source, and you always control your own keys. And by StealthEX, an instant exchange where privacy is the top concern. Go to stealthex.io to instantly exchange between Monero and 450 plus assets without having to create an account or register, and with no limits, making StealthEX a simple way to purchase Monero with crypto anonymously. Monero Talk is also made possible from contributions by viewers and listeners like you, and supporting us is easier than ever. By typing in MoneroTalk.crypto in your Monero.com or Cake Wallet send address field to send us a tip. This week on Monero Talk, Douglas Tuman talks to fellow contributors of the Monero Nodo project, Francisco Cabañas, aka ArticMine, a member of the Monero Core Team, Brindel, aka Interloper, a programmer active in the Monero community, and Abdullah Khan, a computational designer and artist who is Doug's co-founder and is leading the entire project. Together, they talk about the Nodo, a plug-and-play Monero Node device. They go through the technical details of the device and the easy setup process, explain how the Monero Nodo is specifically made to run a Monero node, and what advantages it gives over something like a Raspberry Pi. They also show off the web UI for Monero Nodo, and most importantly, they discuss why anyone looking to help secure and grow the network and use Monero in the most secure and privacy-preserving way possible should run a node. Monero Talk starts now.
All right, what's going on, guys? This is amazing. This is amazing for anybody tuning in. It's also amazing for me because I don't think, since working on this project, we haven't all been together and spoken about things. You know, obviously one-on-one we've spoken to each other. And Abdullah, I've never spoken to you via video, only via chat and Telegram. So nice to more formally meet you. Thanks for jumping on. I'll quickly intro. So Abdullah has essentially been running the Monero Nodo project. He had reached out to me, I don't even know when now, maybe you remember Abdullah. And we generally spoke about some different concepts that we were excited about that we may want to work on together. This was totally out of the blue. He had reached out to me, just like many people do in the Monero community. But Abdullah followed up. He was strong-willed. He wanted to accomplish the project. We settled on the building a Monero node. It was something we were both very interested in. We were both familiar with Monero Box, which was an attempt at what we've essentially brought to fruition here. And it's been a matter of months, I think even years, working on it. And through that process, Abdullah has associated with others in the Monero community. He's gotten guidance from ArticMine. We'll get into that. We have Artic today. And Brindel, who will also chime in, and he's kind of been behind the scenes developing certain aspects of the Nodo, mostly coding aspects. So we'll get into it all. The scope and purpose of the show today really is to give anybody who's interested in the Nodo an overview of what the project is all about, the tech that's involved, what we're looking to accomplish, and just kind of give people a look underneath the hood. And ultimately, what we're trying to do here is do a pre-sale of the Nodo, which we've already started. I think we've sold over 10 of them so far. We're hoping to sell, I don't know, anywhere from at least 20 to 30 in the pre-sale. and that will give us the momentum to push the project forward and hopefully start sending actual physical orders out within the next couple of months. But we'll get into that with Abdullah. So Abdullah, if you want to quickly introduce yourself first, kind of explain, I guess, why you're even interested in Monero in the first place and how you got involved in this, and then you can give a overview of the Nodo, and we'll take it from there.
Great. It's great to be here. Truly an honor, and it's been quite a journey as well. My name is Abdullah Khan. I am a computational designer and an artist, and I've had lots of tech experience and multinational corporate experience in the past, and I kind of left that life behind to kind of pursue my own interests. And it just so happens that Monero just so aligns perfectly with a lot of my personal ethos as far as autonomy, personal sovereignty, and the freedom it entails. And I spotted there was clearly a need for a node, a plug-and-play node that was basically optimized for Monero. And after reaching out to Doug and the talks, and reaching out to ArticMine as well, who it's been a pleasure to be working with. We've come up with kind of a supercharged portable node solution, and hopefully we'll be able to go over the aspects of that today. And so the key really focus was the integration between hardware and software, the bandwidth requirements, and the long-term scaling. And if we begin by surveying what's available out there as far as hardware is concerned, nowadays single-board computers are ubiquitous, and there are many models with varying inputs, outputs, and processing capabilities. And at the same time, there have been major cost reductions in memory storage and SSDs, fast storage. And so a lot of factors really has allowed this project to come about, and the timing really is quite essential as well. And so working with Artic over, we started with the scaling considerations, which is the primary blockchain, being able to host a full version of the blockchain on a portable system that could run 24/7. And we'll probably go into why you would want to run your own node, as well as why it's best to run a node 24/7. And so because of that, we've come up with a hardware solution that is able to scale with Monero as we go forward into the next 5 years, including the upcoming Surface implementation. And so we've got, I think we, at this point, just some overview of the features that we have. So apart from running a full Monero node, the Monero Nodo will be able to broadcast incoming and outgoing connections and maintain a full blockchain and broadcast over ClearNet, Tor, and I2P. We're also running a full LWS, which is Light Wallet Server. And so that kind of allows a bit more convenient with light wallets, as well as we've gone to the trouble of integrating a lot of the requirements on board, like display in the SSD, as well as the dedicated recovery button. And so, yeah, Brindel has been working with me for the past 6 months and on a fork of Pinode XMR. And that essentially was the starting point for the software because it was feature rich, and Dan also, who could not be here today, but he's been a long-term collaborator as well, and he's also continued to work with me and collaborate on the future developments for both our projects, because now that we've kind of deviated, and so based on our hardware stack, we've just streamlined the code and also included a few new things like the display, onboard display, and we've also overhauled the web UI. And so, yep, we'll be going over that as well a little bit, just to show you the prototype and what the interface is potentially going to look like. And yep, at this stage, we're about a month away, I would say, from seeing actual chipsets in our hands. And so unless you guys want to chime in, I could go over the...
Yeah, let me... So who is involved in the project? Let's just give some clarity there. You mentioned Dan as well. If you could just give some clarity as to who is involved and what different people worked on.
Well, the list is quite extensive at this time. This has been a global collaboration with many different people across the globe, and yep, I've managed to find a hardware supplier who is very close to and who has also a lot of experience with manufacturing small chipsets like the one we're going to be developing. And so just off the top of the list, Artic, who's been great, and with the scaling aspects and also the unique integrations that we have with the hardware board. Dan has been working on Pinode XMR for a number of years now, and it's an open source project, and it supports all kinds of single board computers with varying inputs and outputs. And the issue with a lot of these was that they relied on slow or unreliable storage, like, for example, attempting to run the blockchain over a micro SD card. And so Dan has already worked out a lot of the kinks, and with Pinode XMR, he'll be continuing to refine Pinode XMR to support generic single board computer use. And yep, we've also got Charlie, who's in the state of Washington. And so he's going to be our primary collaborator on the chipset and the case manufacturing.
Awesome, fantastic. Let's jump over to Artic.
Well, it's been a pleasure to work with Abdullah on this. My main focus, of course, has been to design it in order to maximize use of the existing and design hardware, to allow for scaling to quite a significant amount. I'm using a base transaction size of 3,000 bytes, which is more than what we would expect with Seraphis, and is roughly where we are right now, also more than what we expect right now. And it's interesting because you have to look at two things. I mean, we have to look at bandwidth, and the bandwidth that's most limiting for a Monero node is actually upward bandwidth. And then you have to factor in that you're serving 12 other nodes, and you're doing that twice because it's transmitting the mined blocks, and you're also transmitting the individual transactions. So this will be like the surge capability. If you push it to its limit, then because of the bandwidth of the processor, you could max out on the USB ports. You could max out roughly at 4 to 5 gigabits per second. And you can actually service an external array over USB 3 at those speeds, and you could push your internet bandwidth up to close to 4 gigabits per second over USB 3. The device currently will be coming out with a 2.5 gigabit per second Ethernet connection, and the Wi-Fi is also in a comparable range. So those are sort of the connectivities that we have. If you crunch all the numbers, you actually get approximately 6,500 transactions a second, which is about 13,000 times what Monero is doing right now. That is the search when you max everything out. Typically, when you consider scaling, I use a factor of 16. That means that this would be like what you would see on a surge day just before, say, the holiday season, where everybody's transacting. Visa has a factor roughly about 16 to 20. And so above that, then what happens is you would have to start to drop some of the upward connections. The flip side, of course, also is that when you are syncing the node, you are actually also need the surge there. So your average would be about 1/16 of the time and of the figures that I'm getting. So you're looking roughly at those numbers. So that's where the perspective is. If we move to a full membership proof, which I heard some figures about 4,500, you would drop those figures slightly. But to put it into perspective, the search capability would be comparable to the current average transaction rate of Visa. Their search capability is a factor of 16 high. So that's where it would come in, which is fairly reasonable for the next 5 years. Whether it lasts whether that holds, of course, depends on what happens to the network. There are a lot of uncertainties there. We could do a lot longer if we have a sort of a reasonable growth. And there are scenarios where you could see, for example, state attack against a major financial system or some major disruption like that will put a lot of pressure on the Monero network in maybe a shorter period of time. We can't predict the future completely, but at least we have a reasonable idea that this thing is, we have a hardware setup that is going to be realistic for 5 years. The challenge is how to make the most of the existing hardware. And it's a very interesting design challenge. For example, the bandwidth of the processor is roughly about 8 gigabits per second. So that kind of limits what you can do with things of your internet connections. High-end residential internet connections in North America typically could be the 2.5 to 8 gigabit range. So you're maxing out there, so you're kind of at the high end. I would expect, these would improve significantly in the next 5 years. So that's kind of right. Now, the other interesting thing about the Nodo is that it's got essentially an idle GPU in their graphics processor. And this is a perfect example of where graphics verification is going to be very, very useful, because these things have been run essentially as a headless server, which basically means that you are not really using the video capabilities at all, or very minimally at best. And in that situation, you do have the ability to use the graphics processor for verification purposes, and that's been demonstrated it can be done. So we don't have a huge limitation on the UPU per se with respect to having to do a lot of the verification. So that's kind of where it's where we're at. So there's a lot of potential to wake up the graphics processor in these devices and take advantage of the fact that it's a very powerful graphics processor that can be used for processing and for verification of Monero transactions. So that's kind of my little summary here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you're saying it's kind of reasonable to conclude that the Nodo will be useful for at least 5 years.
It is reasonable, but I can't anticipate a state attack on Visa or something like that.
Right, you're saying some crazy scenario where, although we've seen rumors of it, just recently, right? Some hacker groups said they were looking from Russia, saying they were going to take down the Visa. Now, like something short of that, where there was a state attack on the Visa network, and people were rushing into crypto, and overnight
I mean, you have to be realistic. We're going to have to, we got to give a chance to the Monero network to respond. It could absorb a significant percentage of that. Let's not kid ourselves. But there's going to be a bit of a shock to the system. People would have to buy RAID arrays, for example, external RAID arrays, etc. And you can take a fair chunk of it, but you wouldn't be able to do the search capabilities of Visa, for example. But you would be able to take because a lot of it would probably go to cash, fiat cash, and so you're taking a portion of the online burden. Monero is one of the few blockchains that can actually scale, so I would expect a big hit. We would see a significant impact on the Monero network. But those kind of are the edge cases. Reasonable growth, we should be fine.
Sounds exciting when you talk about it in those terms. I mean, I don't know if I should be rooting for the downfall of the Visa network. I mean, I kind of am, but I know it wouldn't be good for the world in that instant, but it would be ultimately a beautiful thing, right?
Well, I kind of take the hands, roll up your sleeves approach to these set of situations, and the real question we should be asking: this is going to probably a major disruption of the world financial system.
Yes.
What can we do to help as a community? And that's really the kind of approach that I prefer to take. I know how people feel about this, but it's kind of like, okay, so this potential happened. What can the Monero community do about it? And quite honestly, I think we should, as a community, prepare for that kind of eventuality.
Oh, of course.
Harden the community in the sense of getting better internet, getting extra external storage, that kind of thing. So we should be prepared for it. I don't know if I want it tomorrow. I want to give Monero a chance to grow and develop without having to be put under massive stress on the blockchain and on the community.
Yeah. Let's also take a step back and just like Abdullah was saying, maybe you could give us, because you could probably do this more artfully than anybody here, give us some insight into why this project even matters, why people should even be considering purchasing a Nodo, or even if not a Nodo, just running a full node, why that's important. I often describe it in terms of giving security to the network and giving people the ability to run Monero in the most private way possible because you're using their own node. But you're talking about it in even grander scale, just so that the network itself is able to scale and handle the future use. But if you could give us kind of your whole overview as to why it's even important to have a bunch of people out there running their own nodes.
Well, to make a long story short, it really hardens the network and makes it more resilient and more reliable in case of a major disruption. So the stronger we have, the more excess capacity that we have with nodes, the bigger, the more distributed the network is, the more resilient and the more reliable it becomes. So that's the real issue from that perspective. So yes, you do get the maximized privacy of having your own node, but it's more than that. It's also making a very resilient and a very secure network. So the more nodes are out there, the more reliable Monero will become, the more reliable the network becomes, and the more we'll be able to handle a disruption. And again, the other thing to bear in mind is we should also be looking at having excess capacity in our bandwidth, in our storage capability. So it's it could be a lot easier to get a whole bunch of SSDs now than after some sort of calamity where we're suddenly called upon to help maintain a certain amount of financial activity. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's kind of like you don't, if you think of a disaster where you want to be prepared ahead of time, you don't want to have to be running around getting everything when the disaster hits. And I think this is kind of what I would say here. Also, there's an element of preparedness, of resiliency. Distributed networks I have found generally are far more resilient than highly centralized networks. I saw this during forest fires in Canada, where, for example, when things really got rough, it was the small businesses along the route that really picked up the slack and really took care of first responders. And the larger chains collapsed. Many of them were just too brittle. So you would go down and see a small motel, a small lodge, getting in extra staff, taking care of the first responders and so on. While the larger chains were just shut down with some marketing slogan on their outside of their motels. And I drove around the highway 97 from Prince to Vancouver right after the forest fires and precisely saw this. The small players and the distributed players are far more reliable. If you look at a lot of disasters, typically the really large centralized organizations tend to fail, and the decentralized local level is where the reliability and where the help occurs. So this is also very true in the case of Monero. So I would expect that a decentralized and distributed network like Monero will be far more resilient than centralized banking systems. But we have a responsibility to be prepared, and that's what I'm saying.
Fantastic. And just, because I guess it's one, I've always, realized obviously it adds to the overall security of the network, but I guess maybe describe how does it help with, because you're talking about the future growth of the network and what kind of physical capacities the Nodo needs to be able to handle it, but also just having a bunch of nodes out there will make the network run faster, right? Like if people are trying to access Monero, is it better for Monero if there's nodes all over for them to access? Is it
not
in terms of propagating through the network?
It'll help with propagation, but it's not necessarily faster. It significantly increases the reliability of the network. Mm-hmm. So speed, you're not going to see significantly faster speed in this respect. Because ultimately, we're limited. What Monero is limited by, actually, when you really get down to it, we ultimately are limited by the speed of light. Because ultimately, you have to sync all over the world, and there's theoretical limits on how fast you can make a network. We've got into relativistic effects. Mm-hmm. It takes a certain, we start taking 200 or 300 milliseconds or 500 milliseconds to send data across the world. Well, that's what's business reaction times. When I went to when I went to the 36C3 conference in Leipzig in 2019, and we get the tickets. There was definitely a lag time that was comparable to a person's reaction time that impacted whether you could get tickets or not, just to where in the world you were. I was successful to do it from Vancouver. That was a significant disadvantage for those in Europe. And it's about 150 milliseconds. So you're limited on the bandwidth. Sorry, you're limited on the speed of the network in the sense of bi-relativistic effects. What you do by increasing the number of nodes is you increase the reliability of the network in a very significant way. So that's really where the gain is. So you will see a better response simply because it's a much more reliable network. So one node goes down or a certain number of nodes goes down, you still have a lot of redundancy in the system.
Yeah, I know. Even recently, we kind of saw a bit of an attack on the nodes, right? Where people were listing, malicious nodes that unknowingly people were connecting to using their light wallets. So it obviously it helps with things like that, right? If you're running your own node and you're connecting to a secure node that you know and trust because it's yours. It eliminates issues like that, right?
Well, it also provides a better reliability to the peer nodes. Mm-hmm. Because you have more nodes that are trustworthy out there, you're obviously going to increase the overall reliability of the network. And this is a bit, you're going to be specifically careful if you are connecting over networks such as Tor or ITP with that, because they're quite vulnerable to DDoS attacks and that kind of thing. Now, I know Tor has hardened quite a bit recently by having a proof of work requirement to prevent some types of DDoS attacks.
Mm-hmm.
But the reliability is what you're going to get out of it.
Can you touch upon how it improves people's privacy, how it becomes, not only the most secure, but the most private way to essentially use Monero?
Well, it gives you flexibility. I mean, if you've got a lot of nodes out there, you can either use your own node. In some cases, it might even be an advantage to use somebody else's node and then transmit out somebody else's transactions to your own node. So it gives you a lot more options. If you run your own node, you really have the optimal choices from a privacy perspective. There are certain kinds of potential view key attacks and so on. I mean, if you have to start using I know that the Seraphis upgrade is going to protect a fair amount of this, but there's obviously an advantage to run your own node. I just use my own nodes myself. So I'm not into lightwalls in a big way, only for really small amounts. But your privacy basically is you have the options, and having your own node is a major privacy advantage.
Mm-hmm. Right. On an individual level, I would say, apart from fortifying the network for operational security purposes, also it's just better in many ways because remote nodes know for certain what IP address you're using to connect to them. And if you're on your home network without any protections and just directly connect to a remote node, then they know your home IP because you open the connection from your home IP.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So, and also there's an incremental level of trust just by having your own infrastructure running. It's just you're not having to trust anyone. Of course, if I know somebody, if I know Arctic and he's running his own node, and he shares his public address, and if you want to send any transactions through, feel free to go for it. And that's definitely better. But essentially, it boils down to trust. If you just go to any random open node which has been scraped from the internet, then you don't really know whether or not that node is trustworthy. It could be malicious. It could inject. If not actually jeopardize you, because it could just cause a nuisance by injecting a bunch of data, that corrupt data or something like this. And so in general, it's if you're going to be using a node, it's probably better to be leave it running all the time and allowing a lot of transactions to filter through and relay in order to ensure that your transactions are hidden amongst all the other. And also the thing with initiating a transaction, when you connect to that node, you're not only getting ready your outputs for that transaction, but you're also pulling in outputs as inputs for the Ring CT. And so you really want a trusted source of your own blockchain, so that that you're getting the best experience, and just so that it adds a ton of privacy as well, and
control, of course.
Sure, and that's kind of why we opted in our default settings to run Tor and I2P also, there's a bunch of intricacies, but definitely running through Tor, running all transactions through Tor will slow you down, and ClearNet is definitely the fastest way to maintain sync of the blockchain. But it's kind of also what Monero does, and also how we are able to let Monero do its thing, kind of like with the scaling aspect and the variable block size. That really, when transactions spike, as it's known to happen, the block size, variable block size, really kicks in and allows you to kind of have the effect of dealing with all the extra transactions coming in, but also at the same time, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but
no worries, no worries.
There's, there's a lot of things like the bandwidth requirements. With generic hardware, we've seen a lot of traction, and I'm sure that the generic SBC market has a definite use case where they're adding a network effect to the Monero network. But it's not optimum, and definitely for somebody running their own node, you don't want any bottlenecks in any aspect. So kind of the integrations that we have, like all the like the Wi-Fi adapter, for example, or the Ethernet port, they're kind of really the faster versions of those things, as well as the SSD. And it's integrated so that we're not wasting any bandwidth between PCIe adapters. And to get a little technical here, but so just by having these native integrations, which add up essentially, and allows you a very low idle, because not only do we have 4 high power cores, but we've got 4 low power cores as well, and so it really can scale with the blocks coming in as well, in the variable block size, and so we've kind of essentially brought down the sync time, which was typically multiple days on these generic SBCs, to a few hours. And so that really has a great effect on your experience as well, and on the network as well, wherein there's not only is it running all the time and giving you that extra effect of obfuscation through various other transactions, but also it's fast, and it's not hindering your performance. It's and so on.
We should also say you've done an amazing job designing it as well. It looks beautiful, man. you did a great job aesthetically. It looks fantastic.
Right.
Go ahead.
I should point out that the improvements in sync time are still using the CPU as opposed to GPU verification. So that's a future development software upgrade that could be done, which would improve that even further.
Right, and that relies on using the GPU. There's a protocol called OpenCL, and so essentially it needs C++ coding, and so that's in the future development timeline, and that's going to the GPU also helps with your regular this implementation will help with your PC, which has got a lot more GPU processing power than our small chipset, and so the effect it will have will benefit all computers running a node, not just single board computers. And
absolutely.
Fantastic.
That's something really promising for future development, and so it's just incidental that we've got an idle GPU lying around, and that we need to code for, but. Because definitely the Monero being CPU only is kind of a feature and not really a bug. And so, the issues with Monero, a lot of them I see are being resolved with Seraphis. And so, like the view key with the spend output that within a single thing, and so Um, the LWS as well. Private view keys are kind of a finicky subject, and so
Let's talk about that for a second. Let's jump over to Brindel though first.
Hello.
On it as well. Brindel, you want to quickly intro yourself?
Yeah, as you know, my name is Brindel or Interloper. I'm just a programmer, really. I work a lot with Linux. I host a bunch of services at home, but I also set up servers for other people. I'm pretty active in the Monero Market Telegram group as well. That's how I found Abdullah, or rather, how he found me. That's really it. I'm not. I've been somewhat in the background with Monero for the past 3 or 4 years or something. I've always had interest in it. I think everything's been said already, of course.
Do you want to just give a little insight into what components you were contributing to?
Yeah, exactly. The Pinode XMR project was what I based it off of. Pinode was always more geared towards, getting your own off-the-shelf SBC like a Raspberry Pi and setting it up that way. It's kind of more a do-it-yourself kind of thing. But the idea of the Nodo was to be able to have it work for you out of the box, plug and play. It's was quite a challenge to basically convert all the scripts so that it's already set up for you and it's all automated, hands off, that kind of thing. Really to make it more accessible to non-technical users. Like the speed is of course very important, but something that I think is kind of lacking a lot with Monero is that it hasn't really been all that accessible to non-techies. There's a lot of underlying know-how that's necessary to set up your own wallet and to do it privately and to set up your own node, all that stuff. So with Nodo, I wanted to help out to make it easier, basically. Along with the Light Wallet server, of course. What was it called again? Monero was the original that I think VT Nerd made a standalone implementation of Light Wallet server, and we thought it would be a good idea to implement or to add that to the Nodo, so you can, if you're out and about, you can still quickly sync up your wallet on your phone and make transactions that way. And the issue with the private view key being exposed is it's only really exposed to your own Nodo, so it's nothing really is taken from your possession, so to speak. Your view key is still safe. That's the idea.
I'm really excited about that component. What was it involved? Brindel, did you kind of run that component as well, like adding the Monero server? What was involved in that, adding the LWS?
Well, it was part of Pinode XMR, but we did a few different things with essentially the one aspect of LWS-Admin by VT Nerd is that for some reason there's no option to delete. You could deactivate your wallet, but there just wasn't a way to delete. You could hide the wallet, so we've just kind of. VT Nerd is also in the picture, I would say, and he's down to later develop the actual delete function, but. Yeah, we've just worked out a clever way of getting rid of the entries on the device, so that when you delete the address that you've input, it's going to go away.
At the end of the day, with like a remote LWS server, is that you're kind of trusting them to delete the view key. They might as well just keep a copy of it, So.
Yeah, we should back up and explain real quick. So, like for real noobs out there, so that are currently like using Monero, for example, the Monero wallet, or other wallets that are rely on the Monero server. Like I think Edge is one of them, right? Arctic, maybe some of the others, right? And they're great. They basically feel very instant when you open them up. You don't have to wait for things to sync, because it's already been synced on this Monero server that the wallet provider is running. And so in that respect, it's very nice, super convenient. It's a very convenient way to use Monero, but it currently comes with a sacrifice, and that sacrifice being that you have to provide your view key to these wallet providers, who then use, essentially use it to run the Monero server to do the scanning for you. And theoretically, there's some loss of privacy there, because now you've given up your view key and potentially given up insight into your transactions. And what we've done here with the Nodo is we've implemented the Monero server into it, so you can run your own instance of that server. You could input your view key into it, right, without giving your view key to somebody else who's hosting the Monero, and then you can use these wallets, but gain the instantaneous scanning of the blockchain by getting the information from your own instance of the Monero server. So you're maintaining your privacy while getting the convenience of a light wallet. So being able to use a light wallet in the most private way, at least how I understand it. But Brindel,
no, that's exactly right. And it's all made pretty simple. It's all part of the same interface. It can be set in the display. It can also be set in the web UI, and it's kind of like set and forget. The only thing that needs to be tackled is that it needs port forwarding if you want to do it over ClearNet. So if you have that thing running at home and you want to be able to reach your light wallet server from outside, you need to port forward it, which means that you need to open up a connection to your home network so that it can reach the server. A workaround for that would be to use Tor, but that's Tor, and so you have to set it up on your phone, etc.
It's fairly straightforward. I mean, to create an open port and set it up
for you and me, yes, but
yes, but absolutely. But the idea here is to do that in a seamless way, but also securely. The main advantage is that you have your phone. You have the advantage of a light wallet on a mobile device such as a phone, without having to have the whole blockchain on the phone. You can then connect to your own private Monero instance, basically is what it is. So with you then control. So you have the privacy by going to your own node, combined with the convenience.
Exactly. And it also saves battery life on your phone, that kind of stuff.
And it depends also on the capabilities. I mean, it's possible, it's feasible to actually run a full Monero node right now on a phone. It's sort of a fairly techy thing to do. You need essentially to store it locally. You can run the whole thing on the phone, but it's not. A lot of phones don't have the capacity to do that. They don't have the actual ability to add an SD card that's big enough in there, particularly. So that's an issue, and it's also fairly technically involved, because you basically cannot use a lot of the mainstream operating systems to do that properly.
I mean, a phone is not really made for that purpose anyway, to be honest. I mean, it's a computer, yeah, but it's like really purpose built for, you know what I mean.
I will say that the design of most mobile devices is crippled by design, but that's an entirely separate discussion.
Yeah.
That would be my opinion on it, but.
No, I agree.
Those were definitely factors because the case and the chipset design, of course, accounts for the terminal capabilities. And so we just, the problem with the phone, of course, is that it's just packaged so tightly that it has other limitations and also reliability concerns, I think, with flash storage and things like this. So, I mean, you can, of course, run a node, but for how long is the question? And of course, you could run the node on your own computer, but the caveat is that you would have to keep it running 24/7, and that's not really efficient if that's all you want to do. And so where Nodo really shines is that it provides the accessibility with low power use, and it's not like it's feature rich and also like the internals, like I know Brindel touched upon streamlining the code, and that was a huge part of being able to harness the hardware and integrate with the software, so that we truly are getting a really light kind of setup, which is not too bogged down with other resources and supporting other things. So just a few things about this is that, even though there's no desktop, it's not running a desktop operating system. It's all command line based. But despite that, we've incorporated the display and interface and without sacrificing the processing capability.
Yeah, it's basically a mini server that runs Monero and a couple of tools around it. That's really all it is, but it shouldn't be anything more than that. There's been a couple of other projects I've seen flying around that are basically like all-in-one solutions where they use Docker containers to run all kinds of server stuff, Bitcoin nodes, Monero nodes, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, the idea of Nodo is to really just focus on Monero, nothing more. It's fully dedicated.
Yeah, but it builds from source. So essentially, if you want to see the build process, we're building Monero from source. So again, it comes down to that trust process, and it was quite a thing to be part of that decision-making process, wherein we didn't want anyone to trust us personally with anything, and same goes with the hardware as well. We've designed it to be really good at Monero, but it just so happens that it's really good at being a computer, a portable computer, and so you're free to, if you so choose, get a less efficient implementation, or you could run desktop or do whatever you want with it. It's fine.
You could use it for other things. Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll run fine because obviously the integrations are really the latest, and the chipset is not your generic chipset off the shelf. We've actually had to configure and specify every single detail. And I think we glossed over the recovery process as well. So this comes down to accessibility. Things go wrong. Sometimes there's corruption, when there's power loss or things like this. And so, we've just accommodated the onboard's eMMC storage, which is portable storage, and so that will keep a copy of your Monero node state. So in case things go wrong, there's corruption, you just hit the recovery button and you're able to kind of resync from scratch if necessary, or attempt a repair of your file system. So a lot of things that would take manual intervention, we've just kind of added a few buttons and automated that whole process of getting back up if things go wrong.
Do you love coffee and Monero as much as we do? Consider making gratuitous.org your daily cup. Pay with Monero for premium fresh beans, and if you like what you taste, send a digital cash tip directly to the Guatemalan farmers that made it possible. Proceeds help us grow this channel, Gratuitous, and Monero.
What do you say to somebody who's like, "Well, I'll just go buy a Raspberry Pi and I could do the same thing, and for I don't know, half the price. I don't even know what the price of those things are."
Well, if you have the technical know-how, I mean, you could, but still, like we've said, this the Nodo is the Nodo is purpose built for running a Monero node. So you're sacrificing, like Abdullah said, you're sacrificing a lot of performance that you could get out of this device by using an off-the-shelf Raspberry Pi. Not to mention that the Raspberry Pi specifically has been scalped to hell and beyond. I've seen like the prices for a Raspberry Pi are ridiculously high right now. I don't know about other SBCs, but Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it has major supply issues. Not that it was really ideal for running Monero Node in the first place, but it was a great way to kind of step into doing it yourself. As far as a Monero Node, you just wanted to take care of that process, and definitely we, do see a need for something like this. Having something dedicated in which there's no other programs messing with Monero. As the recommendations are that you run it without any other programs, and so we just wanted to consider. Also, I want to point out the architecture itself. This is ARM-based architecture, which means something that you would find in a tablet or a mobile phone, as opposed to a consumer PC, which is x86 architecture, or typically Intel or AMD processors. So not only the issue traditionally with ARM-based processors was that it lacked the instruction set for hardware-based encoding, the AES 256 protocol. So a lot of it's just one more integration, I would say, that is specific to Monero. There's also a real-time clock. There's a way to kind of an attack surface if your system clock is not corrected, synced up properly, and so that's something that is I guess a detail that really your computer would have it, but not something like a generic SBC. And
yeah, that's actually a very good point to bring up. No, go ahead.
One point to make out is that it's optimized in the sense that, for example, a Raspberry Pi typically will come with a 1 gigabit per second Ethernet connection. This thing has actually a 2.5 gigabit per second Ethernet connection. So when you start to talk about scaling the number of USB ports, it's really designed to be able to achieve more to really get the most out of that processor that you wouldn't be able to do with a more generic system. So that's one advantage, quite apart from the fact that of course it's easier to configure. Now there are all sorts of things you can do. You don't have to go. You can go with a old laptop that is being defenestrated, and you improve the RAM, and there's all sorts of things you can do to run a Monero node, and that's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you have something that is there in the market that can actually is ready to go, is straightforward to use, and is that component. If you're the kind of person that wants to do that, to custom build your own thing, go for it. That's what I would say.
Exactly.
But it's not. This thing is designed specifically for running Monero. Could you use it, for example, to run an Ethereum or Chiral node? Yeah, with an external array, you could probably do that. I mean, the thing is, again, it would have the capability to do that. But I haven't actually tried running an Ethereum or Chiral node. Something else, actually, it's a whole project of mine. It's about 12 to 13 terabytes in that kind of range blockchain. So that's if you want to test out scaling on a real blockchain, that's the one you want to look at. So there's all sorts of things you can do with it, but it is optimized and designed for running Monero and for scaling Monero.
Right. Also, the USB-C ports, those are, and the regular USB-C, those are not 2.0s, those are 3.0s. And so, we're looking into it supporting RAIDs and all, but to be honest, our focus from the start, and Doug and I we talked about this at length, is the focus has been Monero, and definitely this thing has been designed for Monero. We've looked at all those little details that somebody would normally miss, and so. It's going to be. You can be assured that it's going to scale for the next 5 years. It's not going to bog down and stuff like this. And so, we do offer. The manufacturer does offer a 2-year manufacturer warranty on it. But we've got some reliability numbers of these chipsets. They're very exceedingly reliable. they've even kind of been stepped on as part of testing and stuff like this. So, I mean, and not that it's going to go through that intense, but we did consider
the feds bash through your door and start stomping on your node.
Or, if you're
after they leave, you just plug it right back in. You're good to go.
Stop the transaction. I can't.
But, in all seriousness, we did consider it being used in the field. Not that you would need to. I mean, you could set it up at home in a safe location and just forward your port, and you'd be able to use your node from anywhere in the world. But yeah, just to think of every scenario, we did consider the field use scenarios as well, plugging in mobile phones to for internet and a portable USB-C. The USB-C in is as part of that because most chipsets, they use the barrel jack, and so yep, this is kind of
it's well thought out. It's not just a Raspberry Pi in an orange box. It's a lot more than that. Abdullah, we should say too, we've had other companies that have reached out. I don't know if you want to mention their names or not, but we've had companies, at least one major node provider in the Bitcoin community reach out that was interested in the hardware itself. So you want to just mention that? You don't have to mention names, but like as to why or what they were interested in with regards to the hardware.
Sure. I mean, essentially, just the chipset itself. The way it's configured with all the inputs and outputs, it has everything you need, and it's just so versatile that somebody thought of running a Bitcoin node on it, and it would clearly work. Because not our scope, because for now, but yeah. It was the hardware specifically that drew them, because there are other chipsets that run the same processor. You'd be able to get the same, roughly the same processing capability from other chipsets that are available on the market today. It's just that this is a custom one, and it just so happens to be really good and efficient. I mean, there's no wastage as far as excess ports, and so it has.
How would you guys say we compare to, so we talked about all right, somebody could go get a Raspberry Pi, make their own, or use their own computer. How about some of these other companies that are offering pre-built solutions? How would you say we compare? I think Umbrel just added a way, right, to...
Yeah, Umbrel was the one I was referring to earlier. I forgot the name. Umbrel is, the way they do it is they offer a Docker solution. Docker is basically like a containerized way of running Monero. So it runs in a sort of sandbox, like a virtual computer inside a computer. That's how you can look at it, which of course most likely has some performance implications. But Umbrel's focus is not really just Monero. It can be used for it, sure, but it has a whole catalog of things you can run on it. It's meant more as like a personal mini server for whatever you want to do. And again, no.
I would actually optimize it slightly different for different applications. I mean, the closest application would be running something like Bitcoin or Ethereum. That is not that different in many respects from running Monero, in the sense that the design would be pretty close. Yeah, because essentially you have the same issues of transaction distribution and so on from a hardware perspective. One thing you got to watch when you containerize, of course, is it makes it a lot harder to do graphics processing, and that's something that you have to watch for that if you want to do other things with it, because virtualization and guidance, you also have to deal with how you're going to handle that graphics processor. So that's sort of a longer term design. Like if you have a dedicated machine that just does it on the, that doing the graphics processing is a lot more easier. But the minute you start running in containers, then that complicates that.
Yeah, there's always overhead.
Right. There's performance and security implications, and it was very early on that we decided not to go with any kind of Dockerized solution for various reasons, and it was much preferable to run Monero natively, and so that's what we did, and I think that's the best way to do it. But of course, compared to I would say Raspberry Pi, I would say this is about 4 times faster at the very least. We'll be publishing the actual sync time numbers when we have the production samples of our chipsets in the next couple of weeks. And I know we talked, I think this is a great segue to talk about MoneroCon as well.
Yes.
Because I did plan to make it out there with some prototypes, but yeah, I mean, it just wasn't on the cards. There were issues with visas and things of this nature, and so I'm afraid we've had to kind of cancel that demonstration of the Nodo. But we're not very far off, I would say.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, more importantly is getting to the finish line with a good product. And it was a good goal. It gave us an incentive to push harder, right, for trying to make that date. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not going to happen. Mostly because Abdullah can't show up in person.
Yeah, the same story with the Monerotopia as well,
Yeah.
and that's actually when I started. Before that,
It sucks.
you know.
So when are we? What does it look like in terms of timeline when we could actually start shipping these things? Do we have a decent estimate at this point?
Yep. Our chipsets are going to be begin their production line in July, and so thereafter we'll have a chance to put them fabricate some cases, and so we're scheduled for September as promised. I would really prefer to get proper quality assurance done before we ship them out. So please bear with us if there's some kind of delay, but this is the projected timeline, and I don't foresee any delays. But and in the meantime, we've got the rest of what we need as far as the back end. Perhaps very quickly, I could show the prototype for the web UI that we've developed. Obviously, it's not live on a live machine, but just to give you an idea of what it's like, just the settings that are possible.
Yeah, bring that up real quick, and then let's also maybe. I just want to cover. So what is it going to be like for the user? Somebody orders one of these, they get it sent to their home, they open up the box. For those who are quite technically noobish like myself, how plug and play is this thing? Like, what are the steps going to be to get up and running with your?
You plug it in, you wait a little bit, and you connect to it. There's really not much more to it. We're thinking of just shipping. Go ahead.
So sorry to interrupt. It's going to give you an address, and you just input that address into your wallet, and you're good to go.
For connecting it to your wallet, So for full breadth of it, you plug it in, Nodo's up and running, and then if you want to connect, get a little more advanced and connect it to your wallet, you're just going to have to what? Just explain the full.
No, go ahead.
Brindel, you want to take that? Yeah, essentially sure. The display, right?
The display shows the settings you can turn on or off, all kinds of settings you can turn on or off, Tor or I2P, or just go for ClearNet. But really, if you just want the node up and running, you plug it in, you wait a little bit, it will connect to your local network. You figure out the IP, the local IP that it's running on. The default port, you enter that in your wallet, it'll start syncing, and that's really it. Any configuration to the node can be made through the display or through the web UI, so there's no hands-on configuring things, going into SSH into it, all that kind of stuff. It's not necessary. You can do it, but it's not necessary at all.
That's amazing. So me, like I just plug this thing in, and then I'd open up my Cake wallet. I'd go to I don't even know what the setting's called, but whatever, connect new node or something, and from there I'll be able to get the info I need from the Nodo itself to direct it to my home node.
Yeah, it's exactly like. Oh, go ahead.
What I think was mentioned is you have to have an open port on your home network at that port that actually connects to the Nodo. So that you could use it, say, from
the outside,
from the outside of your own, because otherwise you're essentially behind your own firewall. So you have to open that at your router level or at your firewall level. That will allow you to then connect from the outside to that IP address. And because it's usually a port that's not typically blocked by ISPs, so you wouldn't have a problem connecting to it.
So that might be the one like tricky thing for noob. I mean, we could put up a good video for people to walk them through that.
Yeah, it's really simple. Probably put up.
It's simple, but it's the kind of thing you want to probably explain how to do it correctly.
Yeah, it's good knowledge to have for anything, even outside of Monero. How to port forward. I mean.
Yeah, and
how to set it so it's available from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
By default, it's running on Tor though. It's using Tor, or that's
right. And if you had a Torified phone, basically you had Tor running on your phone, you could just connect to the Tor address instead of the ClearNet address, and you would not have to go through any kind of port forwarding. It's a slower experience, but
it's pick your poison basically.
Right.
But we would recommend that you go to the trouble of port forwarding, because that's going to unlock the high speed of the ClearNet, and give
it's just the nature of networking, really. Yeah.
There are pluses to sync over ClearNet and then send transactions over Tor, and so there are hybrid solutions that people also may want to do.
Which is possible, by the way, on the Nodo.
Right. Yeah, so
and
it's kind of like
ITP as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like you say, well, I want to sync the blockchain over ClearNet, and then I want to turn around and use Tor for some cross-border transactions, for example. I mean, that's an example where you would do that. And there are actually advantages to do that because you could avoid certain types of attacks on Tor.
Exactly.
Abdullah, you want to bring it up real quick? Show the web UI.
Okay, so can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is just the home page. This you would most likely just enter your Nodo's address into your browser, either your phone browser or your web browser. In this case, it's on my computer. And so this is just to show some stats. Bear in mind, this is just dummy data right now. It's not actually plugged into a Nodo, but this is what you would expect to see when you would log into your node from your computer. And so
just a small note on the settings. Just want to make it clear that updating is done automatically. It's hands off, just like everything else. It will pull the source from the official Monero repo. It'll build it and it'll restart the node so that the new version is out. You basically don't have to do anything for it. So just
awesome.
Another small detail.
This looks beautiful, simple. I love it. Go ahead.
Right, and and of course, it's going to be refined further. This is just the bare minimum. I would say that we need to kind of get an indication of what the node is doing, and so we've got networks, and so this is where you would see your settings for ClearNet and Tor and ITP respectively. And so, it has your node's address on it, and you can change your port. And of course, you could add a particular peer. For example, if I want to add Brindel's node to mine, as an exception as well, I could do that. I could just enter his address and his port number, and I could add him as well. And this is where the setting we talked about, the route all connections through Tor. So if you were to turn this on, for example, you would not need to undergo any kind of port forwarding. All basically transactions would be routed through Tor. It would slow you down, slow the node down, but it comes with the benefits that Tor offers. And
like Arctic said earlier, you can go for the hybrid solution where you just route transactions received from Tor through Tor, and the same thing with I2P. So you don't have to run the entire node on Tor. It's not necessary.
Right.
It depends on your use case and your errors.
Right. By default, we have this thing where so the daemon is still getting a kind of connection from the ClearNet. So that's something it does by default, I would say. And the only exception to that would be the route all connections through.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to hide the fact that you're using a Monero node at all, that's when routing everything through Tor is a good idea.
Yeah, okay.
It really depends on your risk profile.
Yeah,
how you want to set it up.
And then you quickly glossed over adding a peer. Like, in what instance would you do that? Where you would, for the clear, you were showing that you can.
For Tor and I2P, it is. I'm pretty sure for I2P at least, it is necessary to add an I2P peer in case there's an incoming transaction from I2P and it needs to route it elsewhere. As far as I know, Monero doesn't have a list of I2P peers by default, so that's when you want to add a few. You can find those online. There's people hosting them. I'm actually hosting one on I2P. Same thing with Tor. With ClearNet, it's not necessary to add a peer at all. It comes with its own list of seed nodes, I believe.
Yep, and it updates stuff by default. This is specifically if you just want to add somebody in particular, add a particular node, so that it's basically fortifying the network in a sense.
Making sure you always have a connection going.
Yeah,
and finding other.
It's like a back. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, those are the networks, and then this is if you were to run your private node, that is, you don't want it to be publicly broadcast, and you want it to be available remotely, but just privately to you, and so that requires a username and password, and you would set that up here, and we've got some basic settings for setting up your bandwidth, and if you were to need to. Right now, everything is set at unlimited, so it's going to make the best use of your connection. But if you had some kind of restriction on an upload limit or a download limit, you could change that to 100 kilobytes or 1,000 kilobytes or whatever it is.
But you could set the node to be public or private, right? So
yes.
What's standard practice? Obviously, public nodes are great, right? Because we're assisting the network in that way, giving people nodes to connect to. But what's the general take on that?
The idea of RPC is for wallet connections, so you can set it to public, where any wallet can connect to it and sync and make transactions. You can also set it to private, so you're the only one who can make a connection that way. You can control a node remotely through RPC as well, where you can start or stop mining or do other tasks or get other information. That stuff is always private, basically.
Mm-hmm. But so me as a user, if I'm like, I don't know, I'm a noob. Like, do I want to?
If you're a noob and you're like, what the hell is this? Don't touch anything, and everything's fine. That's.
But ultimately, it's the better choice for helping the network. Am I wrong? Right?
Yes.
The default settings are the best for helping the network. Exactly. Yeah.
The way it's set up by default is that it is public, and so that's fortifying the network, and also that's better for your individual security because, it's accepting all kinds of transactions, not just yours, and so
exactly
right. That makes sense. Okay,
and that's kind of why we've got Tor running by default as well. There is some cost to that by default. If you were to have that off. it would probably be a bit less computation, but it's definitely worth it for the small amount of resources it requires. But it has the benefit of, being connected via Tor as well.
Okay.
And so, yeah, this is just some device settings, your Wi-Fi, and if you want to specify, this is just some advanced settings, I would say. But yeah, this is where you would enter your Wi-Fi details, your SSID and password. And
for clarification, that's what the node will connect to. That's not its own access point. That is what it's going to connect to.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, this is your home network, like what your computers are.
Because it says Nodo, but I'm just making sure that you enter your home Wi-Fi on there and it'll connect to it. That's what it means.
Right. Yeah. This is home Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
It's going to populate a list, and you'll be able to use that just as with any Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it's dummy values.
Yeah, and same goes with the Ethernet. It's automatic, and you just need to plug it in. But if you did have the specific requirements for IP address or your router settings or something, you could, of course, specify that.
Otherwise, it's just going to happen automatically. It's going
to everything's taken care of, and just this is where you would probably just I don't know why, but if you need to shut down, you can shut down, restart if you need to restart, and this is where the recovery process is. To reach the screen, you could either go through the interface, or you could just press the recovery button on the chipset, and it has a bunch of options. So the first option, obviously, would be to try to attempt to repair the file system, and if that doesn't work, and if you're still unable to get this synchronized status here, then you'll probably want to try some kind of recovery.
Mm-hmm. It really is a last resort thing, though, because you're wiping the entire blockchain, which means you'll have some downtime.
It's rare. It's very rare. It's only in case of some kind of
file system corruption.
Yeah, file system or hardware corruption, which is kind of very rare in itself. Unless you have really frequent power cuts, I wouldn't be worried. But even if you do, the USB-C in has the capacity to kind of protect against those kind of shorts. So this is really just a kind of
to be able to troubleshoot in case it's necessary.
Yeah, and get back to where you were from scratch. I mean, if it's kind of like a reboot, a factory reset in a sense. So it's going to build Monero from source and start syncing from the Genesis block. And that's something, if you want to see it do that, just because you don't trust what we've installed for you, even though it is essentially the same scripts that that will do this recovery. It's something to bear in mind. And if the purge is going to wipe your SSD and give you a sync from scratch.
Okay, that's some people are going to love that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really something for accessibility, and you would normally input a bunch of commands to kind of do this stuff. And so Brindel's worked on the recovery script, and we just managed to incorporate it into the interfaces, and as well thought of a dedicated button that can accomplish this.
So now, this is what we're looking at now. This is going to be accessible on the screen on the Nodo itself. This UI?
This what you're seeing right now is the web UI. So you can open a browser and connect to your Node, and this is what you get.
Okay, and then
this is not the on-device display. The display is a different project, but it basically gives you the same options.
Same options, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah. They're going to look and feel the same, and they're going to mirror each other in a sense, because they're using the same source of everything. And so, Yeah, I mean, this option will be there on the device itself, on the on-screen display. So if you go into device and system and recovery, yep, this is what you would expect to see either on the device or on the web if you were to log in on a computer or your mobile phone.
I can't wait to actually doing this at home.
Hell yeah, dude!
running the node out. Come on, guys, make it happen.
Do you have a node at home?
What's that?
Do you have a node at home, Doug?
I mean, I have on my computer. You know, I don't.
Okay.
I've gotten it up and running before.
Right.
But no, I don't have a dedicated node running at home.
I actually travel with one.
That's
cool. Technically, me too, because I have one on my laptop. But,
okay.
Yeah, and I sync it. I have it synced, and then I can sync it over center.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, this is really, this is something that I personally want, right? So I just can't wait till I can just plug this thing in.
I'm happy to hear that, man.
Reliably running. What else you got there, Abdullah?
Yeah, the Light Wallet server.
Light Wallet server, which we were talking about. So this is where you can input your view key, right? So
and your address. So this is where your wallet address would go, and your private view key, and then you would add account, and that would go into requests here, or for all account additions would end up in requests. You would either accept that wallet or reject it, in which case it's going to go away. And all of your active wallets are going to be listed here. So this is just to show you just the interface of, I think we need some more work on it to kind of expand it's still a work in progress, but the functionality is there. So if you were to deactivate this, it would end up in inactive accounts, and you could either reactivate it, in which case it will go back to active, or this is where we come in, and that's where the delete function in the back end, at least it's gonna hide it, so that at least visually it's not part of the system. And in the future, BT Nerd has already promised to implement the actual delete functionality. So instead of in the back end hiding the address from here, you could actually delete it from the blockchain itself, on the system. And so really intuitive, just enter your address, and
right.
It may look a bit weird that there's
where somebody's connecting, for example, their My Monero Light Wallet, and they
exactly. Yeah, I was going to say it may look a bit weird that there's an add account and then a request thing, but the request thing is for My Monero wallets that are requesting to add their account to the server. That's why that's there.
Okay.
So as far as I understand it, you can request from your My Monero wallet to add it to the node, and then you can accept it in the web UI.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah, there's one thing we didn't even mention yet, is that we're adding a block explorer as well, with a custom UI being worked on.
Right, right. This is based off of the
Monero Onion block explorer on GitHub.
Oh, sweet.
XMRchain.net is one that's running it.
Right, but it's essentially a really simplified version of that, and so it has kind of all the functionality to view transactions, to view block data, and again, all of this is dummy data, but it's a full-blown block explorer, native block explorer. So any data that you input here, for example, if you want to prove a spend, then by entering your private view key and the things as kind of sensitive information, then you can really rest assured that it's all running natively. So I would say it's sort of an advanced feature, and due to the complexity of all the information, this is going to be mobile and web UI only. So it's not going to be on the embedded display. It's not going to be
Right.
on the,
That makes sense.
on the touch device, because it's a nightmare to try and fit all
But
this.
it's very cool that it's there, and then those of us that are kind of noobish have it there as an option, and it's a way to actually start to understand Monero on a deeper level. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's real data of your own node, you know, that's why I think it's a very good idea to add this.
Very cool.
The UI will be a bit more polished to make it more accessible as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. One of my issues with XMRchain.net is that it's way too cluttered and way too much information crammed into one thing. So we're trying to make it easier to read, easier to understand, easier to visualize.
Right. And there's a lot of formatting to be done, because we kind of just wanted to nail the relevant information on this page, like the content and that's why it's kind of a bit of a garbled mess, because once we plug into the actual data, then we'll have live data for it, and it's going to behave as your conventional Monero Onion block explorer, except a bit more streamlined, I would say, but with the same functionality.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is it's actually running on your own node or on something.
Yeah, exactly. It's right. Data from the node that you're running, so you can actually, you can view anything that's on the device, basically.
This is beautiful, man. Great job, guys. Brindel, great job. Actually programming this. Abdullah, obviously, amazing job running the whole show. This is my first time seeing this. I know you guys have been hacking away. This is fantastic. This is amazing.
I appreciate it.
All right, I'm actually gonna remove this now, Abdullah. And we're coming up on an hour and a half here, so I think this is a good time to maybe close it out. I'm just gonna put up the actual website so people can see. Yeah, so we are, as I said at the outset here, we're selling them already, even though we're not ready to ship yet. They're $500. If you buy one now in the pre-sale, you get the special Monero Orange version, which is super cool. So we're only going to sell, I think, 50 of those, right, Abdullah? We have it.
Right. That's a limited run of 50, and each case is going to be having its own machine serial number, so that's something for.
Oh, sweet.
But if you want a black one, let us know, and we'll make that happen. Black is obviously going to be a permanent color, and the orange is just the special edition. I think briefly, if you could just talk about the price, because I know the community had some concerns about that. I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of the do-it-yourself solution with the Raspberry Pi, there's going to be some discrepancy. You're going to find $500 a little steep, but I would say, given the integrations and the custom chipset, I mean, obviously we're going to the trouble of having the entire PCB fabricated with these state-of-the-art integrations. And so it's really a very versatile and reliable chipset. And the idea is that, it's going to take care of a lot of accessories and things of this nature that you would have to get if you were trying to build one out yourself. And it's just about justifying that price. We've got the SSD as well, and that's not just a Gen 3 SSD. It's the faster Gen 4 version. So all of these small things, they add up, and we just wanted to give you guys the best experience and the best production quality as well, because we could have cut costs in many ways, like getting these cases 3D printed and skimping out on a lot of integrations that would have translated to better cost for you. But even though cost was a concern, I would say that we wanted to do what's best for a great Monero experience first, and then factor in the price. Even though I think we've managed a great balance between performance and price.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you look at the competition, we're set lower, I think, than really all these other pre-built node devices, right?
Oh, for sure, definitely, and
you know, we don't even break even until, I don't even know what the number is, right? I think we have to sell like 100 of these before we even approach break even on this. So this isn't you know, we're not becoming millionaires overnight with this one, guys. This is we wanted to set the price. We wanted to create a product that would be plug and play, so we could essentially, the mission of Monero Nodo project is to get as many people as possible running nodes.
Yeah, and you got to remember, it's not an application specific thing for Monero. You can take it out of the box, plug in a keyboard and a mouse in and a display, and you can play games on it if you want to. I mean, it's a computer, you know.
One thing that's important to realize is if you start skimping at the front end, then you end up with a lower cost in the long run, because of you don't have the scalability, and you don't have the redundancy, and you don't have the fact that it's going to be on for a while. So you may be a bit more upfront, but you'll save money down the road.
Very true.
That's been my experience with these kind of things. So you have to, there has to be a balance and an optimization between cost and performance. And obviously, but you also want to be able to have something that you don't have to keep upgrading all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good place to close it out. We're at about an hour and a half. Yes, so guys, anybody who's watching this that is intrigued, jump on it, grab one. You'll get a limited edition orange Nodo, and you'll just also help the project, because that each purchase gives us more momentum. That's why we're doing this pre-sale. You know, we want to make sure that the community is behind it and actually wants these Nodos, and we're seeing a lot of great feedback. So it looks like 13 people have purchased them already. We have 27 in stock of the orange ones. Yeah, we'd like to sell out all 50 for pre-sale, and that will certainly give us some good momentum moving forward. Abdullah, anything else you want to close out on? Anything you want to make sure you get out there that you have on your mind?
No, I would say it's more our personal passion into Monero, and kind of it boils down to the need for Monero in my mind. Running your own node and stuff like this. This was just the resiliency and just from a security perspective, it's essentially running your own bank, right? If you're running your own node, in a sense, in the traditional fiat system, like when you're sending a transaction, you send it through a bank, and so in that sense, I think it's having a bunch of these nodes out there in the world is really going to make a difference to the network, and also be able to stick around and keep contributing to the Monero network in the future, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be the main contribution of this project to the Monero community, and of course it's the fact that it's accessible and cheap and powerful, and is just kind of cherry on the cake in my mind.
Yeah. So, I mean, the goal is to get thousands of people around the world purchasing Nodos to make it
Right, and we'll provide updates. We'll continue to refine this.
Yes, for sure.
It's been almost a year and a half to get to this point, probably more, because, but it's definitely been worth it because Monero has the potential to kind of get us out of this dystopian future that we're looking at. So it's I would say definitely it's. I'm really personally invested in the project and its success, and I really hope you all feel the same way as well.
Oh, for sure. I can definitely see these being used in like smaller communities, like the what was the guy's name? Jake from Alaska.
Yeah, he just
amazing guy, dude. You
could adjust that number, Abdullah, because he bought 2 of them.
See, there you go.
not through the site. So yeah, we can adjust that. So there's actually been 15 sold. Yeah. Brindel, anything you want to close out with?
I mean, it's been a pleasure and an honor to work on this project, and I'm actually really glad that I was able to join you on the show. I have high hopes for the project. I think it's going to go incredibly well. That's really it. I hope I encounter one in the wild at some point. That'd be awesome, beautiful.
Man. Yeah. Arctic, anything to close out on?
Absolute pleasure to work on this. Design a product that can actually handle the growth of Monero in the near to medium term. And I think I was really being excellent working with Abdullah on this, as far as getting the right balance between keeping costs at the reasonable level and having something that can actually serve us for some time and serve the community for a period of time. Very good.
Thank you. Yeah, we're honored that you kind of joined the group here and were part of the project, and you were willing to work with us and work with Abdullah to get this going. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Greatly appreciate that. Thank you, everybody, and so this concludes the Nodo Monero talk. I'm sure I'll have Abdullah on Monerotopia at some point. We could do like a Q&A. So for those that are watching this that might have some questions, I think we'll have Abdullah come on. Obviously, Brindel's welcome. ArticMine jumps on all the time, but we'll do that, and I'm sure we'll be continuing to talk about the Nodo as things progress. But yeah, it's full speed ahead, guys. Order your Nodo. If God forbid something were to happen, you'll get all your money back. We accept it. Everybody's you have to pay in Monero. So whatever amount of Monero you pay, whatever that value is at $500 at the time, whatever, I don't know. Let's say it's 5 Monero. If God forbid something happens and we're not able to pull through, we'll send you back that 5 Monero, whatever the amount is you paid. But we're fairly certain we're going to make it to the finish line at this point. And the one way you can help us is by just making a pre-order. That helps, gives us momentum. Thanks again, guys, and we'll be in touch. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. And Arctic, I'll see you soon in Monero.
In Prague.
Yeah, see you in a couple days. Wow.
Yeah.
Right. So long. Ciao.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode. We release new episodes every week. You can find and subscribe to our show on YouTube, Odyssey, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Go to monerotalk.live to subscribe for a full list of places where you can watch and listen. If you want to interact with us, guests, or other podcast listeners, you can follow us on Twitter. And please leave us a review on iTunes. It helps people find the show, and we are always happy to read them. So thanks so much, and we look forward to being back next week.